All right. Hello again, government. Time for video number 2 for our 2 videos of this week. This is going to be on political socialization. So political socialization, and there's notes that I've posted in the digital resource that go along with this. So please do check on those so that you can kind of follow along with what it is we're learning here. Political socialization is an important process that impacts each of us within our own political views and ways we think when it comes to politics and government and society in general. Why we learn about political this is a tongue twister. Why we learn about political socialization is essentially to be able to understand why we think the ways that we do, why we feel the ways we do about certain either big picture political ideologies or more specific things like ways you feel about certain things within public policy, laws that government is going to pass, things you think government should focus more on or focus less on. All of these things are shaped by what we call political socialization. So first, to define it, political socialization is the process by which your views of politics and government are shaped. It's the process, meaning that it's been happening and it's going to continue happening. It's a process. And within that process, we say that there are major factors. There are things in your life and background that very much strongly impact your political views, your views within government. And some things impact you more than others. Now, if you're listening to this, if I say a few of these, you might say like, oh, that one doesn't impact me as much. And that might be true. We're saying more for the average American. There are 3 major factors that most impact their political views and behaviors. And the first one is family. Now, most of you probably could guess that, but the average American is most impacted by the political views and the political ideology of their family members. Now, part of this just makes sense because it's the people that the average person spends the most time around. But in general, when you're a child, the most authoritative voice in your life is the voice of one, if not both, of your parents. The things your parents say to you as you're growing up, as you're becoming an adult, are the things that stick with you. They get wired into your brain. So the first and major factor of political socialization is your family. The second one is the other thing that you spend the most time in your life doing, and that's going to school. So your place of education, the views of the system of education you're in, is the next thing that impacts you and socializes you politically, shapes the ways that you think, the styles of government. In that, for example, the way in which you're learning in this class in government, that's politically socializing you. Now, that doesn't mean, again, that political socialization is meant to be seen as something that's like shady, I guess. It just means that just in general, through classes like government, through going to Valley, where it's a Christian school especially, there are views and ways that you think that have been impacted by that. Things you care more about now that you maybe otherwise wouldn't have. Things you see as something you think is government's responsibility that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. The third one then is in between your family and in between your school, what's something that seems to always be hitting us in some way, shape, or form? That's influence of media. Now, with this, it doesn't really matter what you most gravitate towards as a source of media, whether you're someone that watches TV-based news, whether you read the newspaper every week, whether you do more like the Twitter style news following, where you just follow some journalists from different newspapers and see the things that they tweet and say. Media and the things that the media promotes and says and leans towards, that it socializes you politically as well. And again, when we talk about family, school, media, we don't necessarily mean that one or all of those sources are trying to get you to think a certain way. We just mean by being exposed to your family, your school, and media as much as you are, the ways that you think politically are going to be shaped by those things. Those are what we call the 3 main factors of political socialization. Though there are other aspects of each of our backgrounds, each of the ways that we're raised, that politically socialize us as well. For example, religion, faith, that's a major aspect of political socialization that impacts a lot of us in this group. Your gender, that's going to impact you politically as well. Think of some of the either social movements or legislation and laws that have been passed or happened in the last, 10 to, if we want to go back 100 years ago, to when women gained access to the right to vote, that are specific to gender. And seeing those things impact men and women either differently or to highlight politically socializes us based off of our own gender as well. Your socioeconomic status, whether you come from a background that has had more means and wealth or a background that has had less means and wealth, that's going to politically socialize you as well. So ultimately, I don't mean to say that the only reasons why you think the ways that you do is just because of how you're raised, but it really has had a big impact. The things that you've been surrounded by, the people who you've spent the most time around in your life from childhood till now, have politically socialized you. And not always on purpose, not always to try to get you to think a certain way, but they've impacted you. For most of you, they've impacted you strongly. Now, some of you might hear this and you'd say, well, I actually, my family and my parents think one way, but I very intentionally think the opposite. That still means that they politically socialized you. Whether you were pushed towards certain views or pushed away from certain views, that's still meaning you were impacted by those people or that source, etc. That's what political socialization is. It's how you were pushed or pulled towards different views by the people and things you spend the most time around, and then how that process is continuing. So as you just kind of take some time, reflect on your own political views. And I don't just mean like what political party you gravitate towards. I mean, what are the things that you want government to do? What are the things you think government should most care about? What are your views on government in general? Do you have a view of government that encourages you to want to participate? Do you have one that encourages you to not really even want to pay attention? And try to then think through, like, where have you heard those views? Do your family members have similar views or opposite? Does the school you go to promote similar or opposite views? The media sources you either watch or read all the time, again, similar or opposite views. So just think through those things and how they maybe have shown up in your life, because I think you might be interested in what you find. That's the political socialization conversation for us to have. Again, just make sure you get those notes down, and that's all for this time. Blessings on your week.